Hi, I'm Lisa Fox from the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations. We are a Head Start T and TA Center, Training and Technical Assistance Center, funded by the Office of Special Ed Programs. We're known as one of the early childhood centers. What I want to share with you today is a message about PBIS and how we might bring PBIS from infancy to graduation. I want to talk to you about the science of PBIS and what that might look like in our early childhood programs. So I think we're all familiar with PBIS as an MTSS. It's a framework. It's organizing evidence-based practices, and the idea of these practices are for promoting kids' social, emotional, behavioral, and academic outcomes. This science is also used in early childhood programs. So in early childhood programs through the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, we have been helping states and programs implement the pyramid model for promoting social emotional competence in infants and young children. It too is a framework, a multi-tiered system of support of practices for supporting all young children's social emotional development, ensuring that kids who need a little more intervention are receiving intervention to develop social, emotional, and behavioral skills, and that programs and practitioners are ready to support children who might have more intensive behaviors that challenge adults, really, to be able to be ready to implement functional assessment and behavior support planning in an individualized manner for the support of those children. NCPMI, the National Center, has helped programs think about how to bring this PBIS framework to their early childhood programs. PBIS has defined these essential elements for what does it mean to do PBIS. When we bring the pyramid model to early childhood programs and classrooms, we are thinking about the evidence-based and culturally relevant practices, and those have been defined at every level of the pyramid model. How do we have systems in place, both to support the practitioner who may be working within those programs, to ensure that the interventions are delivered to children and the support is delivered to families? And how do we use data to really support informed decision-making that helps ensure that we implement practices with fidelity and we achieve positive outcomes? The pyramid model is implementing these essential elements of PBIS, but in a different context. So why is the different context part important? Well, think about infancy to age 5. So these developmental ages are much different than our K through 12 programs. How we engage with families is going to look different when you're supporting a family whose child is entering into a group care environment for the very first time, or our families who are receiving early intervention services where they're being coached in how to use evidence-based practices in the support of their child's development. In the early childhood classroom, learning happens in play and in natural routines. How we reinforce children's development and behavior is going to look very different for a 2-year-old than it will for someone in middle school or high school. In the early childhood context, social, emotional, and behavioral skill development really is a major foci, right? So that is the major work. And children learn all the other things that we're guiding them to learn within the context of their interactions with peers and with adults. So having relationship skills and social emotional skills is really pivotal. We expect meltdowns. We expect children to have tantrums, maybe to bite as toddlers, and other kinds of behaviors that we wouldn't expect in our upper elementary classrooms. So we're ready for that, and we think about that differently because young children are just beginning to develop how to regulate their behavior, how to communicate their needs, and how to understand those feelings that sometimes can be overwhelming. So it's a very different context, but it's still a context we can bring an MTSS or PBIS. The other thing that's unique about thinking about PBIS in early childhood is the mixed delivery system of where children receive their services. NCPMI is bringing the pyramid model, or an MTSS, to Head Start, to child care, to home and community, where we might be providing early intervention services, as well as schools, to our pre-K classrooms that might be housed in schools. That means that we need to bring together different leaders. We think about this as a cross-sector system where people are different leaders. We have, of course, people in public education, but we may have people in Head Start or in childcare to be able to think about how do we bring an MTSS to early childhood programs. In our work, we're working in a large number of states who've made a commitment to try and figure out how to bring the pyramid model to their mixed delivery system. I'm sharing this map with you because you might be in one of these states and might want to learn more about the work that's happening within your state to bring the pyramid model, or PBIS as an MTSS, to early childhood systems. When we work with states, we start at the state level with a state leadership team. They think about who could provide program implementation coaching, who could guide implementation sites, and those sites might be the Head Start program, the early intervention program, public school districts. And of course, we have data at every level, data for the leadership team to use to make smart decisions about their implementation and scaling, for those program implementation coaches to use, and most importantly, for those implementation sites to use to think about their implementation and their outcomes and making data-informed decisions. Our website, challengingbehavior.org, is a place you can go and learn more if you're interested in that state implementation and scale up and what that might look like. When we bring this idea of PBIS to early care and education programs in the community, or to Head Start centers, or to our early intervention provider agencies or programs, we have to guide them in how to establish that implementation leadership team. And that team thinks about, how do I get our staff on board? What are our family engagement activities? If they're a classroom-based program, what are our program-wide expectations? What are our procedures for responding when children have behaviors that are challenging adults? How do we provide continuous professional development and classroom coaching, or the coaching of early intervention providers? And then, of course, the data-informed decision-making. If we're bringing pyramid model to public school programs, that are implementing PBIS or MTSS, typically there already are implementation leadership teams, but often those leadership teams need to think about expanding out to ensure that they have early educators in the early education kind of practice lens on their implementation. Again, because the context is different in the early childhood classroom. Some two core components that are really important as we bring this work to early childhood, if we're going to be able to do it well from infancy through graduation, is paying attention to practice implementation fidelity and ensuring that we have the support so people can learn to implement those practices with fidelity. And so what you see on this slide are some images that represent our practice implementation fidelity tools. So the tippy toes is looking at our implementation of practices in that pyramid model for infants and toddlers. The teapot is for the preschool classroom. And we have a practice fidelity tool for bringing this work to early intervention providers. What you also see is a graphic image of our coaching framework. So we have participated with other researchers in the design of a coaching framework really specifically for early childhood and early interventionists. It's called practice-based coaching. And what you see on the image is a ring that says collaborative partnerships. Coaching always occurs in a collaborative partnership with the coachee, with the practitioner. And it always includes shared goals and an action plan, focused observation, which is on the practices and the action plan, and a debriefing session, which includes reflection and feedback. At the center of this practice-based coaching wheel is the pyramid model practices. So if you want to know more about classroom coaching or the coaching of practitioners and caregivers, I invite you to go to the website to see the whole wealth of materials that we have around that. I don't have time in the short amount of time, but as you think about beginning the school year and you think about helping early educators promote social, emotional, and behavioral skills, or you begin thinking about how do we train people or deliver coaching, please go to challengingbehavior.org. I've pulled out a few of the resources, categories we have. I want you to know we have the training materials ready to go, a package that you could use. We also have a package that might be used to run a group for families of preschool children who are worried about their children's social, emotional, and behavioral development. We have lots of family engagement materials, some really nice materials about getting to know families as we start the school year, a lot of resources for classroom teachers. And then for those of you who are in leadership roles, thinking about coaching, fidelity, and we've developed a data tool system actually for tracking behavior incidents that will help you analyze those incidents so that we can do better around preventing behavior and responding to behavior in ways that are appropriate. So I hope that you'll have time to go to challengingbehavior.org and check out some of those materials. So this whole idea about linking systems is about really that cross-sector teaming to align and integrate initiatives. If you're in a school district, it might just be thinking about how do we ensure that our early educators are aligned with our K through 12 work. It might be around community initiatives to strengthen systems for implementation, or an expansion of our PBIS to think about the settings beyond our traditional K through 12 settings. When we link systems, I believe, and my partners at the PBIS Center believes, that we can really yield some greater outcomes when we think about PBIS implementation from infancy to graduation. I think when we do that linking and alignment, we're going to have the shared message about the science of what works. These partnerships will increase visibility and political investment in the work that we're doing, in this work that's critically important. It helps us come together. Eliminating the exclusionary discipline practices is of big importance in our K through 12 work and our early childhood work. We can work together on that. Think about the outcome of a shared message to families from the very beginning of their service delivery, from our early intervention services, our early childhood, into schools, and their understanding of the science. I think these partnerships can help lead to more and greater community-wide investment, and that we can all work together in the implementation of really this very powerful model of promotion, prevention, and intervention practices that yield great academic outcomes for every child and every student. So thank you so much for your attention. I wish you well as you start the school year. Don't forget our website, challengingbehavior.org.